Good morning, everyone. It's glad to have everybody with us this morning, especially Representative Pittman and Representative Sasser. This is our annual meeting where we try to get together with our delegation of the General Assembly and talk about not only the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners goals, but also some of our legislative priorities and goals here in Cabarrus County. And we know how challenging this schedule is for both of you guys, and we certainly appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Senator Newton, I think, as of course you all know, is tied up this morning in Raleigh trying to get the budget voted on in the Senate, and Representative Johnson could not be with us as well. So we very much appreciate you guys being here with us. You've got the books in front of you that have all this information to take along with you as you leave, and of course that was. Was that you?
That was me coughing. Sorry about that.
I thought that was the people behind the curtain in the back trying to tell us something. But yeah, you see in the book the message from the association and the discussion about their priority goals. I think that you're probably familiar with the process that we go through to reach those goals, but it's a pretty comprehensive process throughout a number of months where the association has the various steering committees meet at different locations across the state. I think the one that we have served on met in Raleigh to go over the large list of legislative concerns for counties. Then that is distilled down by that committee to their top priorities, and then that goes back to the board of directors and then back to our legislative goals conference that we have every other year to look at all those goals as a body as a whole, all 100 counties, and decide which ones are most important. And so that's where these come from. I know that both Commissioner Shue and Commissioner Honeycutt have been involved in that process, in that legislative goals process for a number of years. Do either of you have anything you want to add to that explanation that I might have missed, or comments?
I think you did an excellent job, Mr. Chairman. You know, you've been doing it a little bit too, I think, over the years. It's a very good learning experience for us when we can get together in smaller groups, steering committees and things like that. And so it's very good. And the association's got a handle on it. So we're fortunate to be a member of a good association that we've got.
Yeah, but I will add one comment that the association probably wouldn't approve of. Because of circumstances, there are certain issues that come up throughout the year that are that we don't have the same opinion on, and those one example of those is that redistribution of sales tax issue that continues to come up. There are counties and other parts of the state that certainly would have a different opinion of that than Cabarrus County would have. And
I know some of them.
yes, I'm sure you do.
Well, see, Larry and I don't have the same opinion on everything either, but we love each other.
I can't imagine. Yeah, because Commissioner Shue and I agree on everything.
You would say the same thing.
After we go out behind the woodshed for a while, then we used to come to an agreement.
Well, one thing I was thinking about this, just for whatever it's worth, I was thinking Steve would say, "Well, Lynn, I don't quite agree with you on that," and I can't recall ever telling you that I didn't agree with you.
Well, that's just your selective memory. But that, we certainly do recognize the challenges of other counties in other parts of the state, and the commissioners and staff probably sick of hearing me say it, but I repeat this over and over again. When we get together with the other counties and they say, well, what's your biggest challenge in your county? And I say, well, growth capital construction for schools. Those are the things that are really challenging us, trying to come up with adequate funding to take care of those things. And there's always somebody across the table that says, wow, wish we had that problem. You know, we're losing population, or we're flat. We're having to figure out which schools we want to close. Our hospital is closing. We're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for our EMS folks to transport people as far as an hour away when they have to go to a medical facility. So you know, it's all about where you're looking from.
Well, you and I disagree on some things. One thing we definitely agree on is that local sales tax should stay in the community where it's generated.
Well, and I certainly appreciate that, and we definitely do agree. And you know, we try to explain the sales tax, for example, in Cabarrus County, the sales tax that we receive from the Concord Mills area.
The cash cow.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
That's what they call it down east.
Okay. Well, that did not come without a great deal of expense. And expense to make it happen, and continued expense to make it work. And all of that's not the county. Some of that's the county, some of that's the city, a big chunk of that's the city. You know, and both of us working together makes it a real beneficial thing for the taxpayers in Cabarrus County, which kind of brings me around to one of the number one priorities for us locally here is the flexibility on that optional quarter-cent sales tax, which you guys passed in the House, and we very much appreciate that. That is a tax that, in my opinion, has the least amount of impact on our local community. If you are of limited income, then you're probably not going to be spending as much, therefore you're not going to pay that sales tax. Plus, with the people out of county that come here and spend money, that is a potential of $9 million, and our finance person over there will probably shake her head and say, no, you better say 8. And of course, you never know how that's going to work, but you know, we started work on that and requesting that flexibility at least 4 years ago. And the only thing that we've requested is the opportunity for our citizens to vote on it. You know, this is not something that we're wanting to impose upon them. So had we had that opportunity, had that passed, that would have been $36 million over the past 4 years, or whichever figure you choose to use, that we would have been able to apply to school construction or satisfying some of the debt service on what we've already done. In our discussions with the school board over the past couple of weeks, they acknowledged to us, and you know, I hadn't really thought about it in those terms, but we've opened 2 new schools every year for each of the past 4 years. We're in the process of acquiring property right now for another middle school. We're also trying to acquire property for another high school in addition to the $70 million high school that's under construction right now. And then the most recent conversations that I heard was, you know, we've got to do something about another elementary school on the west side of the county because of the population growth in that area. Those schools are exploding, you know, at the seams. So we've got challenges, but they're good challenges. You know, they're healthy challenges, and the issue that comes before us, we increased our tax rate by 2 cents last year to help cover some of that. We're proposed to increase the tax rate by 2 cents again this year. Primarily, that is motivated by the beautiful parking lot right across the street that they're telling us we have to turn into a courthouse. There again, that's another growth issue. You know, we are mandated by law to provide facilities for the courts and all of those other functions. You know, most people don't understand that, you know, the DA, parole, Mike, you're better at that list than I am, but there are many different functions, all of which are
Of course, that we're providing space for over there, we have to, and there's, where I guess, Jonathan, you can tell too, there's probably not a closet left in there that we haven't either stocked or turned into an office.
Clerk of Courts is probably the one I would say is, because of the amount of file storage they have for the court system is one of our major users. Juvenile Justice is another user, so.
And that's one thing that we can just add to that file storage for the clerk of courts. A lot of that is stacks and racks of files simply because the state hadn't caught up with the electronic filing system yet.
Well, one good thing in relation to all that, in the state, in the Senate version of budget, they're giving us the extra assistant district attorney and district court judge that we
Right.
asked for 2 years ago at least and didn't get. So I'm sure the motion on the floor when we get to that in the House will be not to concur, but I'm going to vote to concur because we need those. And there's some other good things in the Senate budget that I like better than what we pass in the House. So I'm planning right now anyway to vote to concur with the Senate budget, and then hopefully we'll get those two people we need.
Right, well, that'd be great. I mean, the capacity, and that is one of those blessing and curse situations. We got that additional assistant DA, we got that additional district court judge, and we gotta figure out where to put them. And I think we can,
Oh, yeah.
but that's it.
Yeah.
Any
they may
further
they may
expansion
they
would
may
be
sharing some
problematic.
offices, yeah.
Right,
Especially
exactly.
The DA is, we've built them out pretty full right now.
We built all the offices we
Yeah, so they may be sharing desks until we get into the new facility, but their docket is so huge and backlogged that they need those additional staff to help move that along, so.
Well, and like I was telling you earlier, they deserve the help.
Yeah,
They need it and they deserve it.
right.
And
Yeah.
again, Eastern North Carolina would love to have your problems.
Right.
Because we don't
And,
have a solution. Money won't solve their problems.
Well,
No
exactly.
infrastructure, no hospitals, no education system, and nobody is gonna bring a business there to solve their problems because of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that y'all have probably studied it more than I have, but based on the things that I've read, that's not a North Carolina issue. That's across the country, where people are choosing to live and locate because of whatever types of amenities that are important to them. We've heard from people here in Cabarrus County, and Kasha can speak to our community surveys, but open space, green space, those kind of things are the things that they talk about. And so they look at those things when they come here.
I was at a meeting yesterday morning, North NC Tech, is what it was called, talking about 5G. Just blew me away. I mean, what that is gonna do to technology, it is gonna be things we haven't even dreamed of.
Right.
I mean, we think we're connected to this thing now. I mean, we're gonna be able to lock our doors at home, we're gonna be able to watch ball games, TV, I mean, everything that, like I said, if my grandmother was alive, she would just be amazed.
Well,
And
there's
I
a-
appreciate you bringing that up to remind me to turn the ringer off on mine.
There's a lot of need even at the state level on that sort of thing, because I'm on the general government of appropriations, and we have all the departments of state reporting to us, and can't remember which department it was, but they made a presentation to us earlier this year, and talking about needing to upgrade their IT. Said they were still using green screen. And I didn't, I haven't been messing with computers long enough that I knew what that was, so I had to ask them what that was when they explained it to me. I said, that's dinosaurs, So, yeah, we need upgrading even at the state level, so
Right.
it's a big issue.
Yeah, well, thank you again for the House passing that flexibility on the local option sales tax. I have not gotten real current updates on the Senate situation on that. I don't think it's in their budget. I don't know, but I haven't heard encouraging comments from that direction. Perhaps you maybe have, I don't know.
Paul would be
Right.
expert, because
he's more into that.
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, that works so much better for us than having to raise property taxes. When we raise property taxes, that impacts everybody. That impacts the retired person whose home may be paid for and, you know, living on Social Security, those kind of things. So we don't want to do that unless we absolutely have to. And that's kind of the position we've been put in, that we absolutely have to. And we still, our list of deferred maintenance for our school facilities, which we've been able to chip away at, and it's gotten better, but it's still how many dollars?
In excess of 300-400 million, probably.
Yeah, those kind of things. And of course, those, I mean, that's kind of like changing the oil in your car. You know, if you decide to double the time, you're gonna pay for it in the end, you know.
Well, but you know how those things work. I'm not sure what the Senate's gonna do with all that, but we're at the point in session now where we're looking at each other's bills and are we gonna hear that or not?
Right.
And the House leadership's gonna hold on to some Senate stuff until they see where the Senate's gonna do some of ours, and the Senate's gonna do the same thing to us, so it's kind of up in the air with a lot of things right now is what's gonna get heard in the second chamber, you know?
Call politics.
Well, we appreciate any support that you guys can give in trying to move that along. And that's not just a Cabarrus County thing either. This bill that the House passed is going to benefit a lot of communities across the state that are in similar situations. So I think that would be a helpful thing.
Linda and I had a local bill that did exactly the same thing, and then Julia Howard came up with the statewide, because there's been a lot of requests. So we backed off, you know, our bill locally, which may have been a little easier to pass, but like you said, this is gonna help the whole state. And nobody likes taxes, but this is a fair tax.
Right.
Yeah. If you don't wanna pay it, don't buy anything.
Well, and for us, where we're located, the cash cow, as you referred to, and the number of people who come from out of state and out of our county are gonna be paying, and I would love to have a breakdown, but I don't know if that would ever be possible, of how much of that 8 million would be paid by Cabarrus County citizens versus how much is paid by visitors and people who come to that area. So that's the beauty of that one, is to be able to get 8 million a year. Plus, our citizens are paying a portion, but based on what you buy. You know, it's not a tax like he's talking about as much. So if you're not buying as much, you're not paying as much of the tax, but yet you have all these people coming in from out of state, out of county, who are helping us with that. So that's why it would be nice just to be able to have the referendum to say yes or no, knowing where it would put us.
Then the other issue on flexibility is when you want to say, well, we were planning to use this for this, but we really need it over here. You know, if you're well enough funded here that you don't really need all that, but you got a deficit over here, you really need to fix that. I'm not going to take this away from you because you're not using it all there. You need to be able to shift that over if you need to, so.
Yeah, and I think the conversation we had earlier about the differing needs of differing counties emphasizes that. You know, where we need it to build schools here, Stanley County may have really pressing, they may need it to create some economic development opportunity. I mean, and it's different, and this is a real fair way of allowing them to deal with some of those things. The other thing that would have a big impact on us is the state school bond. And of course, we know that there's been a House version of that and a Senate version of that. I think the bill that was up, or the proposed bond 2 years ago, would have been $37 million for Cabarrus County, which would have come pretty close to paying for that middle school that we're getting ready to have to go out and borrow money to build. So the combination of that sales tax that would have eliminated the need for a tax increase these 2 years, we believe. So when you have an opportunity, and so we appreciate what the House has done on both of those, and look forward to when
I
everybody.
think Larry and I both feel like the Senate version's what we're gonna end up with, pay as you go now. not speaking for you.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I don't vote for bonds. So, to me, bonds are debt. We have enough debt as it is. I don't believe in adding to it. So I think pay-as-you-go is a better way to go, so.
Well.
See, we agree on something.
If that works, that's great. I don't believe in, I don't like debt either. And the position that we've been in here in Cabarrus County is either we incur the debt and build the schools, or we post a sign on the door and say, class will be held in the parking lot today.
First come, first served.
Yeah, and I don't think that's gonna play out too well for us.
No, and so what is the recommendation for pay-as-you-go when you're in the position that we're in with the growth? How do you do that?
But no.
No.
We're talking about the state paying as you go.
Right, but
You're gonna
we
do the same
hear that
thing.
not just on the state level, but
Yeah.
on the local level too.
Yeah.
Like you say, you don't want to incur the debt, but you don't have 70 million sitting around to build a high school this year and 90 million to build a courthouse next year. So
Yeah.
how do you complete these tasks?
And if you don't
If you
do
don't
it,
incur some
then the
healthy
courts
debt, I
will get
guess.
involved, and they'll be sitting in your
That's
seats
right.
instead of y'all sitting in
That's
your
right.
seats. So it's
So
not
I
like
mean,
you
I
got-
wish if somebody's got the magic answer to that, I would love to know it.
Well, there are several of us in the House that are not gonna vote for bonds, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're not the majority, so you're
Yeah,
probably
well,
gonna get it.
That's the way it heard that there may be, the compromise there is it would be a smaller bond to sort of kickstart the program, and then the Senate side will pick up what the recurring revenues coming from the infrastructure.
Right, the Senate doesn't want any bond at all, from what
Right.
I understand, so I got a feeling there has to be some kind of compromise.
Right.
And it gets right down to it, the governor's gonna veto whatever we do anyway, and we're not sure we're gonna have the votes to override, so.
Yeah.
In that case, what happens, we did away with having to do continuing resolutions, and so the budget would stay as is. The recurring budget would stay as is, till the next time we get a crack at it. So, that's where elections have consequences.
So do you feel like the people that vote for you and elect you really understand how complicated what you guys are trying to do is?
Some who really study it might, but I don't think they ever, they're so busy just keeping their own budget going and keeping their own
Right.
household together that they don't have time to really figure out the stuff we have to deal with up there.
Yeah, exactly. I think most people would be very surprised. We have got a ribbon cutting or opening this morning at 10:30 at the new Amazon facility here in the county, which we're very, very happy to have that, and the jobs and the tax base that that's creating. So we're going to try to wrap it up in time to do that. If we can, if we don't, if we need to go on, we're going to go on, because this is number one priority. And so, as I said, well, I better start talking about some of these bills in the books. And when I flipped over, I think I already just did the first three.
Yeah, you have
First
talked,
three.
yeah, so just to add to what Commissioner Morris said, the flexibility there, currently there is the opportunity for the transportation side to go ahead and call for a referendum. Our issues here now is flexibility, and we're sitting there, okay, we just had a presentation on our transportation needs for the next several years, and the funds identified to make that happen, they're no longer in the millions, they're in the billions, and we're sitting there, oh my gosh. Yeah, so we're trying to figure out, okay, we need money for schools, but what is the future for transportation? How do we plug into Charlotte as more people continue to move here, but still want to work in Charlotte, and we get them off the road? So we just want to, that's why we need the flexibility to use it for schools or transportation or whatever else. So we appreciate your support on that. It sounds like the redistribution may be dying. A slow death, is that accurate?
The sales tax deal,
Yeah.
I haven't, it's been mentioned at all, Larry?
I haven't heard anything about it lately.
Okay,
My
that's
impression has been that the House, most of us really think that,
Right.
as I was saying, it needs to stay where it's generated.
Yeah, there's a lot more pressing needs.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a comment, reference to sales tax redistribution. That's which has been a topic for the last several years, and obviously there's Senate bill here, and don't know where we're going to go, but I don't know if a lot of people understand that of that 7 cent, we only get 2 cents of that. And the state keeps talking about maybe taking from us and giving it to the eastern part of North Carolina. But in my opinion, if they want to take part of that 7 cent, leave our 2 cents alone and move to 5%. You know, that's my thinking. You know, I mean, it's not, they got it anyway. So why aren't they using it now? If you think about it.
There's plenty of places to spend it, so.
I'm
that's
sure of
right.
that, you know, but.
But I agree with
think,
you.
You know, the counties, in my opinion, the state needs to let the counties reap what they sow. And if they sow like we have, then we should be able to reap what our efforts here. And so, anyway, moral of that story is, you know, we keep our 2 cents, they can do what they want with the 5. Thank you.
That's like, we need to sacrifice a cow, okay? Bring me yours.
Yeah.
The other thing, charter schools, there's been some discussion about flexibility or allowing counties to pay for capital side of charter schools. While I don't think anybody disagrees that charter schools are a good option, however, we're having a hard enough time funding our local schools and I know the proposal was to May, and I think they pulled that out, but I know the discussions are gonna still go. May turns into shall sometimes over the years, and we can't afford to do that, so.
Well, I'm opposed to that. I'm very, very supportive of charter schools, any, alternatives. When you have alternatives, you have competition, should make everybody better. But the deal doesn't need to be changed in midstream. We've set it up the way it is. We don't do that. We don't need to start doing that. And to me, part of the thing about charter schools is they want less government control to have that charter school. Well, the more you get from the government, the more the government has a reason to control.
Right.
So why would they want that? You know, I don't agree with doing that.
Yeah. Great. What else you got that we haven't covered so far?
Those are the big tickets. We have some of our department heads here as well, if you guys don't mind entertaining. Karen, you have anything from Human Services you want to come on up? You got anything you want to talk about? No, you're good? Kelly, from the Community Development Planning?
Just the building regulation.
Come up, you come up to the.
So while Kelly's coming up, one of the things that has been mandated legislatively is, of course, that our building inspection fees be the actual cost we incur. We don't make a profit in the sense of that. And so we've done a very extensive study of what our cost is to provide building inspection services. And that is being presented to our Board of Commissioners. That study is being presented on Monday at their work session, and then they'll be asked in time to adopt a new fee schedule to do exactly what the legislature had asked us to do. I think you will hear probably from some constituents, because particularly residential builders, that what we have found is with the number of inspections we do on residences, that we need to charge higher fees. On commercial builders, we actually should be charging lower fees. So you're going to see an adjustment in our fee schedule, but again, it is in keeping with what the state has asked us to do. And I think we're going to be one of the first communities that's gone through this extensive of a study to determine those costs. And it's going to be a lot of information for our Board of Commissioners, I'll warn you. It's going to be a long presentation, but it is very illuminating.
When should we expect to see that?
We'll actually present that to them Monday, but we are looking at either an October 1st or, depending on our technology, a January 1st adoption of those fees.
Okay.
We'll hear about that.
We will.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to have a quick discussion. I'll just bring up-
Introduce yourself.
I'm Kelly Stifford, I'm Planning and Development Director for Cabarrus County. Thanks. So, one of the things that has come up in relation to all of this is additional reporting and for money and complaints and a variety of things with somewhat aggressive return times at times. They've kind of settled out some here and there, but keeping in mind that every time we have an additional set of reporting, there's more cost associated with that service. Just wanted to bring that into the discussion because that's come up several times with, there's new regulations on reporting complaints to the state. and when that should be done and how that should be done. And forthcoming is the financial reports that will be coming, but we have not been told yet as to what the form of that should take. But we know that that is going to be this fall, I believe. So,
I assume y'all are audited by the auditor?
correct. These are additional requirements on the audit, I presume, as to the way, maybe Susan has some information on that.
Once a year, we have to report annual financial information, and it will be integrated into that. So it's just going to be an additional layer with, it's due October 31st, the first year. We're still waiting to see if there's an additional form, but I think it's just going to be incorporated into that form.
I think I was reading something this week, and while you were talking, I was looking at your official title, but I think I read something this week that the auditor is going to require every municipality to have a financial director.
Right.
So that's,
Something we're working on.
yeah. I think that came from Beth Woods.
And I'll say one thing about
We get
that.
her reports when they do.
It shows you how smart I am. I thought they already did.
One thing I'll say about
Mostly
Beth
small.
Woods, she don't care. She's a Democrat, but she don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, who you are, you better have your stuff right.
That's right.
Yep.
And
That's the way it should be.
And that's what we ask people to do. Do your job.
She reports to our General Government Appropriations Committee, and I'm always very impressed with her work.
Okay, any other,
Bobby?
any,
David? Lundy? No? Good.
this is your golden opportunity.
So one other thing, Commissioner Poole, who is not here, and I represent the county on the Water and Sewer Authority, which of course is an independent authority. And I'm sure you've already heard a little bit from the attorneys representing the authority and with the lawsuits challenging impact fees for municipalities and counties, which they were determined they weren't allowed to charge for water and sewer. Of course, you had a legislative reaction to that. It's changed. Authorities had that power. It made it more complicated on how we collect those system development fees, and there are some proposed changes that could make that more complicated again. So that's just something we're following, because we actually, we as a county collect those fees for the Water and Sewer Authority, and we do so, we issue a building permit, which is probably as late as you could do that in the process. Some of the proposals would require developers to pay it earlier in the process. So if I file a new subdivision, I have a new subdivision and I record a plat for 20 new lots, I'd have to pay for my system development fees when I recorded it. Whether I'm pulling those building permits now or I'm pulling them a year and a half from now. We actually charge with the building permit, so they could delay that. And then we would prefer that flexibility to delay that. And again, I think you've probably already heard a little bit of lobbying on that front, just to allow that flexibility.
Well, I wish Senator Newton could have been here, because he really took the lead when he and Linda and Carl and I, working on that. He really took the lead and knows a lot more about that.
Yeah.
So I wish he could be here, but I think there's some things that have to be the way they have to be, but where flexibility can be afforded, it should be, I think.
Yeah. And they have spoken to Senator Newton as well as Senator Bishop about it, and I spoke to Senator Bishop about it probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, just since he also was very involved in that legislation.
Again, it is important that we get your feedback, because we're down there to represent, Cabarrus County. I'm sure y'all are aware that in the utility fund, that we voted where tier 2s and 3s, tier 3s, 1s and 2s were already accessible. Could the rural part of a tier 3 county could access those utility funds through the process? And the reason was they returned $20 million back to the state last year that was not requested out of the utility fund. And we know everybody needs
Right.
infrastructure money, but you get in those processes where you can only, if you get it this year, you can't get it next year, and you just drop the ball and forget to turn your paperwork in, and they don't use up all the money. So now, as soon as that happened, I notified Midland, Mount Pleasant, that now they could access that money. So won't help Concord, won't help Kannapolis, but it'll help Cabarrus County, and that's what we're after.
Well, and I think that's a really progressive move because for a long time, we have said, and many others as well, we may be a Tier 3 county, which eliminates us from a myriad of different opportunities. And we're blessed in one regard to be that, but then we've got other portions of Cabarrus County that are not Tier 3, and this will be very helpful to them.
It's the same scenario that we're sitting here talking about in North Carolina. Cabarrus County is just a micronism.
Well, you're
of
right.
North Carolina.
You're right.
Because y'all have got the have and the have-nots.
Right.
And it's, you need to come up with a system that serves the have-nots just like you do the haves.
So
Right.
hopefully that'll be one place that takes some pressure off of y'all, because you gotta deal with that, whether you can
Certainly.
access that funding and stuff or not.
Well, yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. And we've got some very specific issues that affect them that doesn't affect the rest of the county. So any way that we have tools to address
Got
those.
Midland half a million dollars if the governor, well, the governor's gonna veto the budget, but if we're able to override it, they've got $500,000. But we got it in the House and in the Senate, and it's not budget money, it's agricultural fund money, so it's not gonna be jerked out, but we gotta get the budget passed.
And they will be able to use those funds for water and sewer.
That's correct.
Extensions.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure will be extremely helpful.
Oh, yeah, just
To what
fantastic.
they're trying. And they're trying to build their tax base and accommodate the growth that's coming their direction.
Certainly,
Just like everybody else.
just like everybody else.
I don't even begin to have the slightest understanding of Medicare reform and some of the things that are going on surrounding that, and you're looking at me like as if you do, but just wanted to say that that mental health is a big priority here in Cabarrus County that we've tried to address. We've established a mental health task force. We actually meet in this room. We have gotten a really remarkable response from people in the community. We have representatives from every one of the municipalities, every one of the law enforcement agencies, both of the school systems, the Mental Health Association and other providers. Of course, you may be familiar with what we've done with the Stepping Up program, working with folks in our jail where they've identified a need. And so we're trying, and we've expanded that this year with another position to help follow up. And we have these people that land in the jail because of sometimes very minor infractions that could be related to their mental health issues. Then we send them back out and it's over again, the same thing. So we're trying to connect them with services and provide some opportunities for those folks to get some assistance, to break that cycle, make their lives better, and save the taxpayers some money in what we're spending in the jail. So the folks, what's the total number of people we have on that, Mike?
I think in the last, it's over 90 now that we've worked with over the last couple of years. We had a case manager on the inside, and that was helping them while they were there to identify some services on the outside. Once they are no longer in the facility, it's up to them to make those appointments. And some do, some don't. And so now we're having a case manager on the outside that can follow up with them and get them to those appointments if they need to. And again, as Commissioner Moore said, it's the fixing the person, but it's also helping on our recidivism back and forth in through the facility, which costs local and state money to keep churning over there. So we're trying to.
We call that the revolving door.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. So-
Well, and this is a real sore subject with me, because across the nation, some time back, we made a big mistake by say, oh, we can't institutionalize people, you know. One of the stupidest things, and Pat Hurley over in Randolph County and I tried to fight this stuff, is taking Dorothea Dix, you know, and making it a park. It should have been expanded for what it was there for, you know. We should be taking care of these people. I can't remember, I've read statistics, they're horrifying, but the number of people who are homeless and wandering the streets because of mental illness is staggering.
Right.
I mean, you take care of a lot of your homelessness problem by dealing with them in a better way than what we're doing. And, you know, your hands are tied as far as doing better than that. You're doing the best you can to try to deal with it. But if we'd never stopped institutionalizing people who needed to be put in somewhere and taken care of, we wouldn't have quite as big a problem as we do. In just one instance, when I was pastor at McKinnon Presbyterian Church, the former pastor told me, you know, there's a lady who wanders the streets and she's going to want to come and leave her backpack on the screen porch at the manse. Let her do it. It's fine. Well, she did. And I talked to her some, and I did some checking and found out this lady was very wealthy, had a really nice house, and it worried her kids to death. She would not stay there. She wandered the streets. She needed help, and she wasn't getting the help she needed, and they couldn't do anything about it. There's no sense in that. And I think we need to go, some of our old ways maybe needed to be changed, but there's some things, the way we used to do things, we need to go back to because they worked. And what we're doing now is not working. So, I'm sorry, I'll get off my high horse.
Oh,
but
well, I
that's just a sore
absolutely
subject.
agree with you. And as part of our work on this mental health task force, we've had folks come in that particularly are dealing with issues with their children, and we've heard them say they set the house on fire or they threatened another family member, and we don't have anywhere to get the help that we need. So, and that is not an economic thing. That's from the top to the bottom. Those resources are not available.
And Linda would share, with the education budget, she has addressed this, you know, as much as the money was available, but she's done a really good job to get more nurses, mental health people in the school system.
Well, and that we very
provide
much
those
appreciate. Cabarrus County funded how many positions last year? 9 positions.
Mental health positions in the school system.
In the school system, which the feedback that we have gotten from them is that is extremely beneficial and has been very helpful to him.
And they need more.
Yes, yeah, well, I mean, we got that many more schools, you know, but we keep chipping away. I think the state has provided for some additional,
They have.
yeah, in the.
Linda could address that better than I can.
Right,
being
so
in
with
the education
those
community,
and what we're funding locally combined, I think it will go a long way in addressing some of those issues. And there again, we're impacting kids that if these issues can be addressed, we're making their lives better. We're keeping them out of the penal system. We're keeping them out of human services. I mean, we're making life better across the board for a lot of folks.
Well, and I've volunteered in the homeless shelter down in Monroe when I was down there and here in Concord years ago. And now I'm not, you know, a clinical psychologist or anything, so I can't say definitively, but I could tell some of those people were mentally not right and they needed help other than just coming in the homeless shelter. You know?
Right.
So the other issue that's been here and it continues to be is those individuals that are going through the system. There's not enough beds, there's not enough facilities out there, and didn't know what you guys were thinking or hearing on that level. Are there any opportunities for additional facilities being built or anywhere throughout the state? Because it's a real challenge. And so they end up in the emergency rooms and then, you know, we've
It's
even.
a challenge nationwide.
Oh, it is,
It's,
sure. So
you
it's
know, North Carolina may be on the low end of it when you look at places that have better environments like Texas and I think it was last night I was looking at a program in Oregon and they were talking about the kids couldn't play on the ball fields anymore because there were so many needles and syringes on the ball fields and stuff, and they were getting pricked with them and that kind of stuff, and you just go, how do we get there? I mean, we didn't get there overnight, you know, but, and then the next question is, we know we got a problem, how do we solve it? And and it all takes money.
Sure. Yeah, the whole process of the mental health is just a challenging issue just to navigate it. And the boards also, last year, we created another position within our Human Services Department just to navigate, just to help those clients when they come in to navigate the system, because you can get lost in that system so quickly. And then, so those are the other things that we've
If
been
they were
pushing
capable of
for.
doing that, they probably wouldn't be in the shape they're in
Sure,
to start with.
sure, yeah. So, and just want to put a plug in for us, and Karen's here. Karen Calhoun is our Director of Human Services. She's in the back here. But we've really started pushing this, and she's come up and she's brought in the resources from the nonprofit, the faith-based, and every other community that we can think of to come together, and they've created a hub program. It's helping the underprivileged feel beloved and belonged. But it's really bringing those resources from everywhere, because there's no way government can do it alone, and the churches can't do it alone, and the nonprofits can't. So we're trying to pull all those people together and creating this one-stop type atmosphere or environment for you if you come in, because a lot of times, even in general human services, if you come in for one thing, you go here and you leave, and then you got to come back and go over here for something else. So we're trying to get that hub and bring them together. So Karen and the other folks from those.
Well, I'm gonna add another job to you. I mean, you don't have enough to do, I'm sure.
I don't.
In your spare time. Anything you can document, like, you know, let's say this is a pilot program, and you can document that, then maybe we can use it statewide. I mean, this is outside the box, and that's what we need, because the box is not working. The walls keep.
Right, and we're working on data indicators and having common language for developing measurements that we can track progress.
I knew you were smarter than me all along, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, we need pilot programs that address this, because I mean, they're smarter people than all of us that are trying to come up with the solutions, and it's tough.
Yeah, we're bringing representatives into our human services centers from the nonprofits, the other nonprofits, and giving them square footage in there to operate. And then also we're starting to push our social workers out into the communities as well. And First Assembly is right now the first location, and that will be creating another hub or another one-stop over there. And
Sounds
so,
like a good idea.
Yeah.
And to your request for documentation, I serve as the liaison for the commissioners to that board. Be careful what you ask for. Because I think she'll get you all kinds of good information, won't you?
Absolutely.
But back to your original question about facilities and beds and all, we do talk about that up there. Nobody has found a solution yet, but it is being discussed from
Great.
time to time.
Good.
Obviously, other priorities get attention too, so but that is something we do need to work on.
Well, and any time that you need, if there's anything that we can do to be of assistance here as far as talking about situations that we deal with, we too have spent many hours talking about that. I got really excited and enthusiastic about a program that I heard about at our legislative conference in D.C. Several months ago, people talking about a crisis center that they had created that was working extremely well, where you've got these families who have a family, and I just use that as one example. There are all kinds of situations, but you know, if a family has a family member that is in crisis, and right now, the only option for them is to call law enforcement. And law enforcement comes in, and it may be because there may be an individual that, from what I hear from all the talks that we have, a very common occurrence is you take the medication, it helps, and you feel better, and then you say, I don't need this. And they stop taking the medication, they have a relapse, the family members can't handle it, they call law enforcement, they come pick them up, they put them in the jail, because it's the only place they got the jail or the emergency room. Those are the two choices. You can imagine and you know, y'all talk about it too, what the impact is to our hospital system and the emergency room. So they go in the jail, then the next day they're released, and then we do it again. You know,
Big
that
cycle.
revolving door, as you mentioned before. And what they've done there is they have this crisis center where they can either go out, you know, they're on call. So instead of law enforcement going out, these individuals go out, and part of this pilot project in other states is called data-driven justice. And it has a lot to do with people understanding and navigating the HIPAA laws and what information you can share, so that when that call comes in, whether it comes into the 911 center, they know, yes, we've had 6 calls this year from this address. This is the individual that lives there, and these are the problems that have occurred, and this is how we have addressed them. So when that individual goes out to that house, they know the background, they know the history, you know, and the way they describe it, they said many times they can go in, they can counsel with that individual, they can talk about if it's the medication issue, and most often they will agree to take their medication. They get the situation stabilized and they leave. Then they call back first thing the next morning to talk to the family members and say, is everything okay? How is it going? And 90% of the time they say, everything's great. You know, everything's good. We dealt with that issue. We're back on track. And so then life goes on. Instead of that very a mentally ill person off of their medication, what kind of impact does it have on them to be thrown into the jail? And you know, so nobody wins. So that's still something, you know, we've kind of brainstormed, you know, how could we create, and they can also come, so if law enforcement goes out, then they have a facility where they can bring them. And they've got that 23-hour bed where they can stabilize the situation, and then they're good to go back home. And so there again, that's another one, saves tremendous amount of money for a number of different, and it makes people's lives better, you know.
Well, just getting back to the thing about deinstitutionalizing, people give you one reason for why they're doing something when really there's something else, and the reason it was presented for not institutionalizing people is we're violating their rights. I think the real thing was we don't want the responsibility and the cost.
Right.
But how much is it costing us trying to deal with it without that? I mean, it just down to the very thing of that space in the jail should be there for criminals, not mentally ill
Right.
people, you know. So I think by trying not to spend and have this responsibility in one area, we're having to take it up in other ways that are not adequate. So but we really need to get back to that somehow.
Yes, yeah.
I wish we had an hour on this subject.
Right.
Because it touches all our hearts. I mean, you know, you got to have sympathy and compassion for those people, because it's just by the grace of God we're not one of them.
You're exactly right.
and-
And then nobody is immune.
Right.
Nobody.
But we have a program in Raleigh called Healing Transitions, and to tell you how government and community and all that work together, they have a relationship with the police department, and I'm sure the court system, you know, is okay with this, but if they pick up, you know, and it's more for drug abuse and those type things than just mental illness. But the police will actually take them by Healing Transitions and drop them off. It's, you know, you want to go to Healing Transition, you want to go to jail.
Right.
And if you know, and they got counselors, and if they want to get clean, they have a detox program, no drugs. You know, you don't get to stay high while you're getting detoxed. You know, you can do it the hard way. And you sleep on a styrofoam or you know, soft mat on the floor. That's where you start out at. If you make it through detox, and of course you got all this support system, then you get to go up and get into a cot in a room that's got blocks this high, and there's 8 or 10 of you in that little room. And it's a progression, and, I mean, they just do a great job, but it's a 2-year program. But it's the community working together. It's not, oh, it's your job, you solve it, you know. That hadn't got us anywhere yet, so.
Well, and of course, those things overlap, the mental health issues and the opioid crisis that we're all having to deal with. And that's kind of where those things intersect. From your profession, you're certainly more knowledgeable than I would be about that. But, you know, one of the books that I just completed talked about the way that some of these folks that are addicted to opioids very innocently arrived at that point, and it requires a process to fix that.
We want to look down our nose and think and say it's a heart problem. It's not a heart problem, people. It's a brain problem, and their brain doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work. It's not that they can make a logical decision. They couldn't make a logical decision if that'd make them win the lottery.
Right.
It just, you know, the connections don't work till they get clean long enough for that brain to grow back and develop back, and it will, but it doesn't do it overnight.
Right.
We will put you on our mailing list so that you can join us for some of those, if you're in town, to join us for
Be
the
perfect.
Mental Health Advisory Board.
We're not in town much,
Just to
but
just to hear the conversation and see the representation,
Yeah.
the broad representation of the communities.
We would be delighted for
Well, that's-
you guys to join us.
that's kind of my passion, you know.
I think that
That's
is
who I am.
probably the broadest representation of any group that we have in the county, because there are very few agencies or people that are not engaged in that process. Early childhood education is another thing that we've put focus on. We have an early childhood task force that is currently functioning. You know, we talk, of course, through our Smart Start Fund, our Cabarrus Partnership for Children. You know, we're trying to address those issues, birth to 5, and then on beyond. We have had some extremely challenging situations with our Head Start program here in Cabarrus County, and of course, that's federally managed funds. We've worked very closely with Congressman Hudson, trying to work through that quagmire of process, and looks like we might be coming out the other side to address that issue somewhat better. Robbie Furr, who's our extension director, has also been chairman of our Partnership for Children, so he has been very supportive and engaged in that process. So it has been challenging, but we're working. And Mike, did you have anything to add about the Early Childhood Task Force and what they're trying to do?
Well, I think they're looking, just as you're hearing locally and nationwide, solving that problem pre-K, and how do we catch them at an earlier age so that they're ready, so that they can be successful once they get to school. So that committee is made up of nonprofits and educators and governments as well. So hopefully we can start solving some of those problems, or at least I think we've all identified them now. How do we fix them? And of course, it all goes back to money again, but so and other resources. But Commissioner Poole is helping lead the way on that as well. So.
Yeah, and that I should have indicated earlier. Commissioner Poole is tied up with her regular employment in the school system, so she could not be with us this morning. Commissioner Kiger had some other commitment out of town, I think, that prevented him from being here today. So we have been tasked with reporting back to them on what we talk about today. This is not being videoed this morning, but I think they are doing an audio recording of it, should ever anybody want a copy of it or whatever. That has been a big focus of Cabarrus County, has been transparency. and we try in every way possible. The best way for us to do the kind of job that our citizens want us to do is to make sure they have the opportunity to see everything we do and all the discussions that we have. So we're very proud of that, and we feel like it has served us well. You know, it's kind of like one of the things we talked about earlier is you can't force them to watch it, though. You can't make them listen to it, so.
I'd like to have access to that, because I like to go back and say, well, I could have said that better, you know, that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah, well, our folks can certainly give you a copy of that. They can probably email it to you. They do smart things that I don't understand how
Because
it
I'll tell you something you
works.
may not know. Y'all can criticize me all you want, but you'll never criticize me as hard as I do.
Yeah, well, one other thing before we close that both of you have heard me talk about before, and it's like a broken record, is I want to first say we appreciate Representative Pittman's efforts to try to protect some of the facilities out at Jackson Training School. We would love to see that to go a step further. We've had conversations. I know that Senator Newton has been involved in the conversations. I know Senator Alexander has indicated to me that he's talked with both of you.
Talked to him yesterday.
Yeah, and so I sort of pounded on Wayne when we were up there a few weeks ago, and I didn't get a chance. You were out of town or had come back. That session ended a little bit early that week, but.
Sorry we had to miss you like that.
Yeah, well, we too. But we talked about that process. We would love to see the state of North Carolina relinquish control of those buildings out there, and the county is very much willing to help try to facilitate some way to put those structures back in private hands so that they will be restored, repaired, put to some sort of adaptive reuse, and preserve the heritage that's out there. Also, put them back on the tax books as well, which is an added benefit. I brought thumb drives with the video that our historical moments Judge Horton does a fabulous job, and does that in conjunction with our channel here. But I gave those videos, gave a few extra copies, so that anybody that, you know, there's tons of people in Raleigh that don't know what Stonewall Jackson School is, or that it even exists. But it does a good job of explaining the history, how it came to be. It also has a lot of good information in there about these structures and these cottages, and the fact that there are local community organizations that raised the money to build those buildings, you know, way back before our time. But we can get more of those if that is a benefit.
I hope that can happen. I know you've got to go. Let me just give you just a quick history on that. 2014, the people at Stonewall Jackson asked me to come out there and take a look at the buildings. And, there's one big building there where you've probably seen that the front porch is falling through. You tiptoe around that hole, you look through the glass around the door, about that much of the floor up to the staircase inside is falling through. There's a building where a tree is grown in the first floor window and coming out second or third floor window, stuff like that. While we were standing looking at one building, stuff was falling off the roof as we stood there. And they've had vandalism. Somebody got in one of those houses and apparently lit a fire to stay warm and burned it down. They had a man living under that gazebo thing, homeless man living in there they didn't know about for a while. And we talked about people wanting to use those buildings for, renovate them and do something with them and all. And they told me at that time that, and this may be an exaggerated estimate, they told me just getting the asbestos out was going to be $2 million per building. So that's part of the reason nobody, they were telling me, has ever actually done anything, because it just costs too much even to get started working on those buildings. So they said for the time being, that's why they wanted the fencing. I tried to get that for them in 2016 when they asked for it. Wasn't able to get it, although some other similar funding happened elsewhere. But I finally got it for them, last term. And so we just felt like that's what needed to be done for the moment for public safety. And try to keep people from getting in there, getting hurt, messing things up. The chapel across the road, it's terrible what's been done over there. We probably should have fenced it in or something. I'm worried about that bridge. I'm not sure it's going to last. I don't know. It probably lasts longer than I will, but I'm not so sure with all that stuff growing on it, it's not going to pull that apart eventually. There's a lot that needs to be done over there. I'd love to see those buildings renovated and something done with them. It's just going to take a lot more money than most people have to do it. So if we can work that out, I'll be tickled to death. But I got the fencing just to protect people from getting hurt in there for the time being.
Right, and we appreciate that. And of course, this is step one. If we can, we're just trying to get to a point where we can let a private developer, this is not something for the state to spend money on. To get the private sector to say, yes, I can do this, and I certainly don't want to step on anybody's toes, but it has been my experience that the state's cost of doing things is not always the most economical. When you get a private guy out there with his own money, he figures out the least expensive way to get the job
And
done.
you certainly have the historic tax credit thing.
Right,
I started to say,
exactly.
write down House Bill 399 that we just passed this week for Historic Preservation Act 2019, and see if there's some incentives. I know there's a lot of incentives in there, but see
Yeah.
something applies there.
And we very much appreciate the passage of that bill. That affects a lot of things that are going on in Cabarrus County. The project at the Hotel Concord, the Maxwell Furniture Building project. It affects a number of things going on in downtown Kannapolis as they're looking at putting some of those properties on the National Register. So that has a really positive impact on Cabarrus County, and we very much appreciate maintaining those credits. The other issue with the Stonewall Jackson property out there, and you mentioned the chapel, and that's one of the things that we talked to, that might be a piece that can be escalated. They were talking about the properties over there along Old Charlotte Road. They said, we'll put it on a study and that'll take about a year. And my position on that is, well, a year from today is better than a year from next month. So, you got to start somewhere. But there was some mention that by the chapel being on a separate parcel on the other side of the road, perhaps that could be addressed more quickly. There are a group of local citizens, part of the historic Cabarrus group, I think, that are very engaged. They've gone out there, they've done some cleanup, they've done some removal of some of the overgrown things. If I remember correctly, they couldn't get permission to do anything about the bridge as far as cleaning some of the growth off of that. So when you have an opportunity to have any input in that process.
Would that be a thing to contact DOT about? Do they have anything to do with that, or is that more local?
I have gotten the impression that it's been more the justice, the folks, the folks in charge of the training school, but I'm not absolutely sure on that.
Well, I can talk to Jamie Bowles, chair of JPS, and see if we can get him movement there.
Anything I can do to help you on that.
Yeah, and
I'd be delighted to see that get fixed.
We have got local citizens that are saying, turn us loose, give us the permission, and of course that there have to be parameters on those things, but this is not a single. I'm not the only person interested in it. There are a lot of people around the county. The other piece of that is on the back side of that Jackson Training School property. That's our Frank List Park, and we still have not gotten finalized. I think, and Jonathan can speak to this, or Mike, we have verbal commitment of renewing our lease on that property, but still haven't gotten the final paperwork in place. We can't understand why. We got about $35 million invested in that park out there and continuing to make improvements. For example, Senator Alexander, not being from this area, he's very concerned about the preservation end of things, and that's his profession and specialty. But I have got the maps for him, because he was not familiar with, to show the overall scope of that property. It's how many 200 some? It's a lot.
The total tract,
Yeah, more like 600, I think, when you
600
include the
acres.
armory and what DOT is using and everything.
Yeah.
If
And,
you want to shoot me an email on that and give me whom I need to contact, I'll be glad to look into it.
Okay, great. We, depending upon what the state's future plans are, you know, if they wanted to, if they put that property in our hands that we've already made improvement, that would end this, of course, that lease is pretty long.
Yeah, the lease is proposed for another 28 years, but if we owned it, that'd be even better. Because-
Then that would eliminate that process. And then comes the question of what happens to the other 500 acres that sits idle in the middle? You know, some future expansion of the park, some, you know, there are a lot of opportunities. So, but that's not our priority. You know, those are just things to think about looking at the overall picture. Does anybody else have anything they would like to add before we adjourn?
Just one quick comment to Wayne, reference the Midland deal. Do you think that maybe a resolution from this board in support of that would help further that through the voting process?
It's a done deal. It's in both budgets. It doesn't affect the budget. It's ag money. We just got to get it, either override the governor's veto. If he vetoes it, I'm not speaking for the government, for the governor,
Right.
but it's a done deal.
But even if he was to look at it and veto it, it wouldn't help in no way at all, support of it?
No, it's up or down.
Well, I felt like I had to ask, because
Yeah, no.
I'm the commissioner liaison to Midland.
Yeah.
And if they listen to this and they didn't hear me ask something for them, they might think I forgot about it.
I appreciate your cooperation.
Well,
so,
I
but-
would like to see them
but
get that.
It's good. I mean, it's not something that's, somebody else is gonna steal their $500,000, because it
Yeah.
doesn't affect the 24.6 billion. If you say that real fast, it's not much
Right.
money, but.
Well, I had to ask
But-
anyway. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your time today. We appreciate the open communication that we're able to have throughout the year. We really like your legislative assistance in every instance, and sometimes that's where we get our best communication and back and forth.
feelings at all, does it?
No, because I kind of like my legislative system too.
Well, I like mine too, but it's just in a different way, okay?
I was just basically going to say what Chairman Morris did. You know, thank you for being here this morning, but more importantly, thank you for what you do year after year, day after day, in a situation that is somewhat like ours, where there's just not enough dollars and opportunities to make it all work, and trying to figure out the best way to make it work for the people. So thank you.
And I think we all agree there's some places where we could probably cut out some waste, but nobody agrees on where that is, you know?
It's one man's, what's that thing about one man's treasures, another man's junk, or vice versa, or something like that, so there you have it.
Yep, and that, you know, one of the other, you know, I mentioned earlier about our focus on transparency, the other one has been on collaboration. And this board has worked extremely hard with our municipalities, with our school boards, the other entities that we deal with here to make conversation and communication as comfortable as possible, and to try to cause that to occur as a natural part of doing our job. And we feel really good about what we've been able to accomplish on that, and we feel that same way about you guys. And when we talk with the folks around the state, sometimes we're surprised that that's not the case in their counties. And I'm sure you probably have stories to tell that we don't hear, but You know, we're very proud of the fact that when we're talking to other people, say, when we call our representatives, they respond. You know, we can communicate with them, so we thank you very much for that.
Well, I'd like to just add, every time I come, how impressed I am and how engaged Cabarrus County is. I mean, if it's the juvenile court system, you know, if it's your county commissioners and your human services, and that, you know, and of course, everybody does lip service, you know, yeah, we like to look after our people, but y'all are actually getting groups involved that, on the ground level, that knows what's going on and can give you good information and so on and so forth, and I commend you for that.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you saying that.
Because just like you said, I don't think every county and every municipality has this type of organization, so
Right.
you should be proud.
Right, and of course, you know, I can't say enough about the other people in this room, which is our staff. We are extremely blessed across the board, and they do a really, really good job of making less impressive folks like myself look smart, and I appreciate that.
Well, you're smart enough to hire people that are smarter than you to do the job, so that's.
Well, we know that in
smart.
Raleigh, just try doing it without them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you again.
a pleasure.
We're going to go ahead and adjourn. I feel sure that, given, which is a blessing to you, because we could go ahead asking you questions and for hours and hours and hours. And so we appreciate your patience with us. And so we will stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.